again, South Florida. Welcome again to Ask the Experts. We get letters. Everybody says, we email you about different shows, and we always wonder if you read them. Well, first of all, we read every email, but we have had so many people in the South Florida area ask us, why do you not have an estate planning show? Well, first of all, we've only got so much time each week for the show, and we very seldom have openings. We got an opening. We are so lucky to find one of the top estate planning attorneys in South Florida from my backyard in Coral Springs, Florida. Good morning, Andrew Rosenberg.
Hey, good morning, Steve-O. How you doing?
Man, we did it. We normally it takes us about 3 or 4 weeks to get a new expert on with all of our shows we do across the country. But I wanted to get this show on. I want people to know this will be the first Monday of every month at 9:25 Eastern Standard Time. And Andrew and I spent a lot of time talking on the phone. Andrew, we're so lucky to have you.
Well, thanks, Steve. I feel lucky to be on the show. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so first of all, tell everybody about your firm and your background.
Sure. So my background is I'm originally from, believe it or not, Indianapolis, Indiana. So I'm a Midwestern kid. And I actually met my wife, Debbie, at Indiana University senior year, and she's from South Florida, and that's how I ended up down here. I knew I was going to marry her, and I said I want to live near family because hopefully we'll have kids one day. And we ended up. I said, "Do you want to live in Indianapolis, where I'm from, in the cold, or do you want to live in sunny South Florida?" And she chose South Florida. So that's how
Wonder why.
That's how I ended up down here in South Florida, and hence 30 plus years later, married and 2 kids and everything going well. So that's my background real quick. But as far as the background in estate planning, believe it or not, I ended up getting into the estate planning right out of law school because that was the first job I got. So that's kind of how it happened. And I fell in love with it. And I worked with a solo practitioner for many years. And then I started to outgrow that situation. And then I've had several different positions, in-house counsel for insurance agency and all their insurance agents to help with their clientele, with their estate planning and all sorts of other things that I've done in the estate planning arena. But I've always been in estate planning since my practice began. I graduated in 94, so I'm getting old. I just had a birthday. I'm now 57. So I've been doing this for quite a long time. It's hard to believe. But I do love doing estate planning, and the firm is you either call it the Rosenberg law firm or Andrew G. Rosenberg, PA, and we are based in Coral Springs, Florida. I live in Weston, but we are based in Coral Springs, and I'm the only attorney. I've always had it that way because I always want people to realize if they really need to speak to the attorney, the buck stops with me, and I'm the one that's available. I do have a pretty nice staff. I have 4 or 5 people full-time that work for me and that help me with the entire process. But I am the buck stops with me when regards to the estate planning and elder law scenario.
Andrew, I hate to put it this way, but a couple of days ago with this plane crash in D.C., I thought about our show today. And, there was a lot of young people who passed. People just don't ever know. I mean, I've talked to friends of mine who are older, and they'll go, "Well, I'm in good health. I don't need to do anything right now." And they put it off to the side. But you think about these people who lost their lives. They weren't expecting, they might have been in the best of health. I got to tell you, Andrew, what you do, and you and I talked for a long time, what you do, you've really got to have a heart for being an estate planning attorney. And I got to tell you, you are so perfect for this. But people really don't know when their last days are.
That's for sure. And I'll tell you a quick story. So you're talking about unexpected. And this plane crash obviously is absolutely horrible. And you got these young, up and coming Olympic skaters,
Yes.
and I mean, it's just absolutely horrendous. But I'm going to give you a quick story about myself to give you an idea of what is unexpected. And usually, what happens, by the way, Steve-O, is something that something hits the fan with someone, right? It might be
Yes.
they get diagnosed with cancer, God forbid, or they have a health scare, or they have a good thing. There's a wedding, or there's a grandchild, or a child, or there's always some sort of an event or a friend that unexpectedly passed away. Things happen. But let me give you a good example of how things happen. I'm in pretty good shape. I really take care of myself. I'm a swimmer. I used to competitive swim. I was a Division I tennis player. I actually played at Rutgers University until I blew my knee out, and then transferred to Indiana. But I will tell you, I'm a competitive swimmer. I'm on a swim team, etc. I used to be before COVID. And there was one day swimming with the swim team that we swim at 6 in the morning with the master swim team, and I just didn't feel right, and I pulled myself out of the water during the beginning of practice, and I told my coach, I said, I think I'm having a low blood sugar attack or something. Can you get me some apple juice? And believe it or not, we all the swimmers know each other. We all know their first names, but no one knows anything about what anyone does. And the one time that this one guy was swimming with me in my lane, he ended up coming out of the water, and he came over to me, said, "Hey, Andy, I'm Chris. Tell me what's going on." And he says, "I'm a cardiologist."
Oh.
So I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I tell him, I said, "I just don't feel right." And so he makes me lay down on the pool deck, Steve-O, and I'm laying down on that pool deck, and he starts asking me tons of questions. And lo and behold, he says, "Andy, I think I'm going to call the hospital and have an ambulance come and have you go to the cardiac unit to be safe." And I end up going into the ambulance. He reads my EKG right then and there, the cardiologist that was the swimmer, Chris. It was completely normal. And when I said it can't be normal, and the reason it can't be normal is the week and a half before I had a nuclear stress test, and my nuclear stress test shows that my normal EKG is abnormal. So I have to carry that in my wallet. So they said, "Well, where is it?" I said, "It's at my house in my wallet." So we had to have my daughter and my wife bring it to the hospital. I went to the hospital, and they were going to release me from the hospital. And lo and behold, my wife and the nurse said I look like crap, and they said, "You're not going to release them." And then they run blood work finally, and I come back from changing out of my swimsuit, and they told me to get in the bed as quickly as possible. They said I was on the verge of having a massive heart attack.
Wow.
So I ended up having what's called a widowmaker. I don't know if you've ever heard of a heart attack called the widowmaker.
No.
But basically what it is when you hear people that drop dead of a heart attack like before they hit the ground, that's the widowmaker, because you don't survive. And I had 100% block of the widowmaker. And the only reason I survived, Steve-O, was because I had all these extra collateral arteries built because of how bad of a swimmer I was. And I had to keep up with everybody over the years that my heart needed to build up more oxygen. And so it created all these extra collaterals. And I survived this major, major attack. And 99.4% of the people do not survive that. And I
And you're in your
survived.
50s.
And I was 48.
Wow.
48. So when you talk about not expecting things to happen, that's a prime example. And I will tell you, and I talk about this when I do my workshops, I will tell you that when I was in the hospital in that emergency room, and my wife's freaking out, my daughter's freaking out, and the doctors are really concerned about what's going on, I was as calm as could be. And the reason I was so calm, Steve-O, was because I knew I had everything in place. And I told my wife, I said, if God forbid it's my time, I said, I got enough insurance. I know where everything is. I said, you know where everything is. I have my estate plan in order. We're all in great shape. And she looked at me right in the eyes and shook me and said, I'm not ready for you yet. We got 2 young kids to raise. But when you talk about, this is really needed, and people, when people don't expect to die, no one expects to die. I had a recent guy call me who used to do my landscaping, and he called me and left a message saying, I want to meet with you to do some trust and wills and all that good stuff. We ended up calling. I called him back, left a message, didn't hear from him. Called him the next day, left a message, didn't hear from him. Called him the third day. His wife picked up. He dropped dead unexpectedly of a heart attack between the day he called me and when we were trying to schedule an appointment.
Wow.
So things happen,
And
unfortunately.
Andy, you and I talked about so surprising. Look at Prince here with all of his money and all of his managers. The guy didn't even have a will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at Joe Robbie.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at, Joe Robbie from the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
As organized as they were not organized enough back then to deal with the estate tax problem. And now we don't have that problem really. But back then it was a big issue, and they had to force the family to sell the team. That was why the Robbies sold the team. It wasn't because they wanted to. They had to.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
even the most famous people, a lot of times you hear stories about that. You think that they would be organized and have people take care of them, and it slips through the cracks.
Another thing you said to me, Andy, what really stuck out is you said, I want to keep people out of probate. Now, listen, if you've never been through probate, it could become very expensive. And it's so nice to hear an attorney say, I want to keep you from having a lot of expenses.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people don't realize that probate, at least in Florida, I don't know how it is in other states, but down here in Florida, it's expensive and it's time consuming and it's just not a fun process. And I mean, Steve-O, there's a Florida statute that tells us what the reasonable attorney fee is for it, and it's 3% of any asset. So if you have $1 million home, which is now unfortunately fortunately if you own a home, which I do, but if you're trying to buy a home, it's much more difficult. But if you have a $1 million home, $500,000 home, take 3% of that if it's got to go through probate. And if it's a $500,000 home, it's a $15,000 legal fee. $1 million home, it's a $30,000 legal fee. I really want to avoid that process if I can for the families. And it's so much less expensive if you plan accordingly, and much better for the family to do it proactively than to wait and have someone pass away. But here's what people don't understand, Steve-O, is that people think it's like the movies. You have a will and you pass away, and they think that you're going to go to an attorney's office, sit in a conference room, and they're going to read the document, and then the credits roll like a movie, and then everything gets dispersed. But that's completely false. So people come to me all the time saying that, oh, I'm fine, I have a will. And I'm like, no, did you know that a will guarantees probate? And they're like, what are you talking about? And that's what people don't get. People don't understand it. Don't understand that process. And that's so here's the difference. And tell me if I'm boring you. I don't mean to bore you, Steve.
No, you're doing fine.
Okay. But if someone dies without a will, without any estate plan, in Florida, it's called dying intestate, dying without a will. And that guarantees probate. If you have assets in your name alone, without a beneficiary form, without any beneficiary form, it's in your name, a house, brokerage accounts, whatever, bank accounts, and there's no estate plan, you're going through probate. Okay? Unfortunately, the state of Florida is going to have a statute to tell us where everything goes, and that's usually not where anyone wants it to go. But if you have a will, which is called dying testate, so dying intestates without a will, dying testates with a will. If you have just a will and you have those same accounts, those bank accounts and brokerage accounts and houses in your name, you're also guaranteeing probate. That's what people don't understand.
Wow.
They think that if you have a will, it just goes, and it doesn't.
So, this is why this show is so important. This is not an advertisement for Andrew's law firm. This is Andrew's here taking time out of his schedule to educate you, because there's, especially in estate planning, there's so many different areas, whether it's elder law, whether it's estate plan. And, Andy, who would you say needs estate planning?
So You may be surprised, but what my answer is everybody. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody. So let me give you an example. I have a lot of clients that have kids that are getting ready to go to college or are in college, right? They're 18 and they're going off to college. A lot of them go to University of Florida or all other parts of the country. And I tell those parents, I said, your kids need estate planning. And they're like, what the heck are you talking about, Andy?
Right.
And I'm like, listen, I know you don't think they're adults, and you and I know they're not adults mentally or financially. They can't afford anything. But in the state of Florida and in the eyes of the state of Florida, they're considered adults. And so what happens if your kid goes off to the University of Florida and gets in a car accident and is in the hospital and needs to make healthcare decisions and they're not able to make it for themselves? They're unconscious. It's a bad car accident, which has happened with my clients. If you don't have the proper estate planning documents, you're not going to legally be able, the doctors won't talk to you. The medical providers won't legally talk to you without the proper estate planning documents. So I always tell people, if you have an 18-year-old kid going off somewhere, they need to have some basic estate plan. And it's not necessarily a will. It might be a durable power, or it might be a healthcare surrogate, or both. And those are important things. If you're older and you don't think you have assets, you still need to have basic estate planning. If you have a ton of assets, you definitely need estate planning. So I tell everybody, estate planning is meant for everybody. It doesn't mean that you have to have the most expensive stuff in the world, but you need to have some of the basics. And that's really what's important about it.
I don't know who labeled it estate planning, but that throws everybody off. They go, estate. Oh, I don't have an estate, but you're really right. It's actually everybody should do this. And, there, gosh, there's so many things. And I told you the show goes by really fast,
Yeah.
and it does. Tell people why they should retain you as their attorney when it comes to estate planning.
Well, I would hope they would want to retain me. Hopefully, number one, I try to cut through the BS and tell you exactly how it's going to work. I mean, I know with the workshops that I have that I've been doing recently that people like the fact that I answer all their questions and I make sure that people ask questions at those workshops because I want to make it interactive. And a lot of times people will meet with attorneys and they won't give them the full answer. They'll only give them a part of the answer because then they want to make sure that the attorney wants to make sure that they get hired. And I'm of the opinion, just do the right thing. Tell them exactly what's going to happen, pros and cons, and then give them options, and then let them make the educated decisions, and just be upfront and honest. Look, I try to be honest, and I'm an upfront Jewish Midwestern kid. So my job is, and I'm not a New Yorker, not against New Yorkers, but I have a different personality. So I want to really help people and make sure that I bring it down to a level that makes sense, and then you have options. And a lot of people think that they have to get, trust and all this other stuff. And a lot of times I try to do it a different way where they can spend less money and get the same job done without having to spend as much money. And that's really what I try to do. And I'm not the right fit for everybody. I'll be the first one to tell everybody that. But there's a reason why I think that I have 400 plus Google reviews and I'm 5.0 rating because I try and do the right thing.
Now, you do seminars, don't you, Andy?
I do a lot of workshops. Yes, I'm actually
Okay.
doing
When's
one.
your next workshop?
Yeah, well, I'm actually doing I got two coming up. But one is a private workshop for Medicaid planning for a facility. But the upcoming public workshop I have is coming up next. I forget what the date is. February 12th, I think.
We've got it on the
Yeah, it's
scroll
coming
right
up.
now.
It's in Pembroke Pines, and it's going to be called Essentials for Estate Planning. And I always tell people that these workshops are very interactive. If I want you to come. I want you to ask questions because if I sit there, I could talk the whole time, but that's not going to help anybody. I'd rather have people ask me questions while we're going through it, and because everyone else is thinking about those questions as well. Yeah, it is. It's February 12th, by the way, in Pembroke Pines at Total Wine. But those workshops I make it an hour and 15 minutes start to finish. Whether we're done or not, I make sure we get done. And it's really interactive, no cost, but you have to call to reserve a spot because there's only so many spaces we have available. And we tend to get a very good turnout for these workshops.
Yeah, I want to tell all of my friends over at the Polo Club, we've got so many listeners who listen on iHeart at the Polo Club. I am telling you, and I don't endorse very many of our experts. I mean, it just, they're all there for a reason, but I feel so good about Andrew. It's Andrew Rosenberg. And I just, especially all my friends over at the Polo Club, if you're in the Delray Boca area, you know exactly where I mean. Andrew, again, tell people how they can reach you.
Sure. The main office is located in Coral Springs at 5421 North University Drive, Suite 101.
Right off the Sawgrass.
Right off of the Sawgrass Expressway and University Drive, right there. And then my main office phone number is 954-755-7803. And I can guarantee you that I will not be answering the phone. My staff will be answering the phone to make sure, that things get done properly. And then my email address, if you need to email me, is Andrew, ANDREW, and then at rosenberglawfirm.net, ROSENBERG, lawfirm.net.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm looking at my cell phone right now. We've gotten 4 text messages. It's really funny. 2 of them say, I was one of the ones that emailed you to have an estate planning program. Thanks for listening. And all of them are saying, what a great show. Thank you for bringing this show to us. We are so excited about this show. And Andrew will be with us again next month. He's on with us the first Monday of the month, right behind Ray Ferrara, Provice Management. And Andrew, what a great first show. And we will see you again next month.
Sounds great, Steve. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Hopefully
it was wonderful.
All right. Good. I'm glad everybody.
I told you it goes by fast.
One. What's that?
I told you it goes by fast.
It goes fast. Yes, it does.
Okay, Randy. We'll see you again next month. God bless you.
Thanks, Steve-O.
That's Andrew Rosenberg, attorney Andrew Rosenberg. He's our new estate planning attorney in South Florida. We are so lucky to have him. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week. Stay tuned for tonight. We have our Eat and Critique show at 6 p.m. Again, same place, same station. Thank you, Rebel. We'll see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.